All right. So you've sent over this really interesting collection of like articles and research on China's project to combat desertification. And it's obvious you're looking for like a deep dive into what's being called the Great Green Wall of China.
Yeah.
We've got news reports and research highlights, and it looks like even some personal notes you've jotted down.
Right.
So let's unpack this together.
What's truly remarkable to me about this project is not just the sheer scale of it,
Right.
but how China is strategically weaving together its environmental and economic goals. It's a complex story with implications that reach far beyond just planting trees.
Okay, so let's start with like a big picture overview.
Okay.
What exactly is this Great Green Wall, and what's the ultimate goal?
The Great Green Wall of China is a massive afforestation effort that's been underway for decades.
Right.
So imagine like a 3,046-kilometer green belt strategically planted around the Taklimakan Desert,
Okay.
largest desert in China. The primary goal is to halt the advance of desertification and protect surrounding areas from those devastating sandstorms.
3,046 kilometers.
It's massive.
That's longer than the entire U.S. coastline?
Yeah.
So they've essentially built a giant living wall to hold back the desert.
Precisely.
Wow.
And it's not just a random collection of trees.
Okay.
They've carefully selected drought-resistant species that can survive and thrive in these harsh conditions.
Okay, so this green belt is specifically targeting the Taklimakan Desert.
Right.
But I remember reading something about a much larger initiative, something called the Three-North Shelterbelt Program.
Yes.
Is that connected to the Great Green Wall?
You're right on the money.
Okay.
The Taklimakan Green Belt is just one piece of this even more ambitious puzzle. The Three-North Shelterbelt Program is a monumental afforestation effort that spans across northern China, covering a vast area roughly the size of Italy.
Wow, an area the size of Italy.
Yeah.
That's hard to even visualize. It sounds like China is really throwing its weight behind this whole afforestation thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the results are already visible.
Okay.
Thanks to these massive efforts, China's national forest coverage has jumped from a mere 10% back in 1949 to over 25% by the end of 2023.
That's more than double the forest coverage in just a little over 70 years.
It's really impressive.
Yeah. But let's zoom back in on that Taklimakan Green Belt for a moment.
Okay.
You mentioned it was completed after 46 years of work. So it's actually finished now.
Yes. After decades of planning and planting, the initial construction of the Taklimakan Green Belt is complete.
Wow.
Of course, the work doesn't stop there.
Right.
Maintaining this green barrier and ensuring its long-term success requires ongoing effort and adaptation.
That makes sense. It's like building a house. You don't just walk away once the roof is on.
Exactly.
You've got to keep up with maintenance and make adjustments as needed.
Exactly. And the challenges are significant. Creating a thriving green belt in a desert environment requires addressing water scarcity, monitoring ecological impacts, and constantly adapting to the ever-changing climate.
Okay. So those are some big hurdles they're facing.
For sure.
But let's focus on the positives for a moment.
Okay.
What are some of the most remarkable achievements they've already seen with the Taklimakan Green Belt? I'm especially curious about the impact on the Xinjiang region where the Green Belt is located.
The transformation in Xinjiang is truly remarkable.
Okay.
Forest coverage there has increased fivefold in just 4 decades,
Wow.
going from a meager 1% to 5%.
That's incredible.
So imagine that for a moment you're living in Xinjiang, where once there was barren desert,
Right.
now there are trees offering shade, preventing dust storms, and even creating new economic opportunities.
That's a powerful visual, and it highlights the real-world impact this project is having on people's lives.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just the environmental benefits. China is strategically integrating the green belt into the local economy.
Oh, wow.
They're supporting the development of fruit orchards, cultivating medicinal herbs,
Interesting.
and even promoting desert tourism.
So it's not just about stopping the desert, it's about creating a whole new ecosystem that benefits people.
Right.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Are there any specific examples of how this economic integration is playing out?
Absolutely. Think of the Turam Basin, a region once plagued by sandstorms and poverty.
Okay.
Now, thanks to the Green Belt, it's a thriving hub for jujube fruit production.
Wow.
These juju orchards provide income for local communities, help to stabilize the soil, and even attract tourists who come to witness the desert bloom.
It's like they're turning a problem into an opportunity.
It really is.
It seems like they're really putting a lot of thought into making this project sustainable in the long run.
And that's a key element of China's approach.
Okay.
They're not just planting trees and hoping for the best.
Right.
They're constantly monitoring the project's impact, adjusting their strategies, and looking for ways to make it economically viable.
Speaking of adjustments, I know climate change is a major concern globally.
Of course.
How are they factoring that into their plans for the Great Green Wall?
They're definitely not ignoring the elephant in the room.
Right.
Rising temperatures and shifting rainfall patterns are already impacting the Green Belt. To adapt, they're investing heavily in research and development, focusing on drought-resistant plant species and innovative irrigation techniques.
So they're using science and technology to find solutions that can withstand the challenges of a changing climate.
Precisely, and they're not afraid to experiment.
Okay.
They're exploring everything from genetically modified plants that can tolerate extreme heat to using drones for aerial seeding and monitoring.
Drones planting trees.
It's pretty amazing.
Now that's something I want to hear more about.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that.
Okay, but before we dive into the tech side of things,
Okay.
let's talk about the bigger picture for a moment. You mentioned that China sees the Taklimakan Green Belt as a model for future projects. What exactly do they mean by that?
They're looking to replicate this success in other desert regions, both within China and potentially even in other parts of the world.
So it's not just a local solution, it's a global vision.
Exactly. China is actively positioning itself as a leader in combating desertification on a global scale.
Wow.
They're sharing their expertise, providing technical assistance to other countries, and even investing in joint research projects.
That's a pretty bold move. It sounds like they're really committed to making this a global effort.
They are.
But let's not forget, there are always challenges and potential downsides to consider.
Right.
Even with a project as ambitious and well-intentioned as this.
For sure.
Right.
And that's something we definitely need to explore further.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground so far. We've got a good understanding of the what and the why behind the Great Green Wall.
Right.
But what I'm really curious about now is the how.
Okay.
How are they actually making this happen?
Yeah.
What are the specific techniques and technologies they're using to turn this vision into reality?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, and that's exactly what we'll dive into next.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So you were just asking about the how behind the Great Green Wall.
Right.
What's fascinating is that they're not just like bulldozing the desert and planting whatever they can get their hands on.
Right.
It's a carefully orchestrated blend of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge technology.
That combination of old and new always intrigues me.
Yeah.
It's like they're respecting the land's history while embracing the nature. What are some specific examples of that blend in action?
Think about water.
Okay.
Obviously, a precious resource in a desert environment.
Right.
So they're using drip irrigation systems that deliver water directly to the roots of plants, minimizing waste and maximizing efficiency.
Interesting.
But what's really cool is how they're integrating that technology with ancient water harvesting techniques, like building underground cisterns to collect rainwater and channeling it through the irrigation system.
So it's like they're creating this intricate web of water management, combining the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
It reminds me of those old aqueduct systems the Romans used to build. Amazing feats of engineering.
Yeah, and they're taking that ancient ingenuity to the next level by incorporating modern sensors and automation systems.
Wow.
Imagine sensors in the soil that can detect moisture levels and automatically adjust the drip irrigation system based on the plant's needs.
It's like giving the plants a voice.
It really is. Like they're creating the smart ecosystem that can respond to the environment in real time.
I can see how that would be crucial in such a dynamic and unpredictable landscape.
Right.
Are there other examples of this tech meets tradition approach?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You mentioned drones earlier.
Right.
And that's another area where they're pushing the boundaries. They're using drones for aerial seeding, scattering seeds across vast stretches of desert that would be incredibly difficult to reach by traditional methods.
Okay, but scattering seeds from a drone sounds a bit random.
Sure.
How do they ensure those seeds actually take root and grow?
That's where the innovation comes in.
Okay.
These aren't just your average seeds being tossed out of a drone.
Right.
They're coated in a special nutrient-rich gel that helps them retain moisture and protects them from the harsh desert conditions.
Oh, wow.
And the drones themselves are equipped with sophisticated mapping and targeting systems that allow them to precisely distribute the seeds based on soil type, elevation, and other factors.
Right. So like they've turned these drones into flying farmers. They're not just planting trees, they're creating the optimal conditions for them to thrive.
Right.
I'm blown away by the level of thought and precision they're putting into this. It's almost like a giant science experiment unfolding in the desert.
It does have that element of experimentation.
Yeah.
And speaking of experiments, they're not just planting any tree that can tolerate dry conditions.
Right.
They're meticulously selecting species that are native to the region and provide multiple ecological and economic benefits.
That makes sense. It's about restoring the natural ecosystem rather than just creating a generic green space.
Exactly.
Can you give us some examples of these wonder plants they're using?
One of the stars of the show is the saxel tree.
Okay.
It's a true desert survivor with deep roots that can reach down to underground water sources.
Wow.
Those roots help stabilize the soil, preventing erosion and creating a more hospitable environment for other plants to grow.
Okay.
Plus, the saxel is a nitrogen-fixing tree, which means it actually enriches the soil, making it more fertile.
Wait, so these trees are actually improving the soil as they grow?
They are.
That's incredible. It's like they're giving back to the land even as they're taking root.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Are there other plants with these superhero-like abilities?
Another one is the Haloxylon emmodendron, a shrub that's not only drought-resistant but also salt-tolerant.
Oh, wow.
This is crucial in desert environments where salt accumulation in the soil can be a major problem for plant growth.
Right.
And beyond their ecological benefits, many of these plants have economic value as well.
Okay, now we're talking.
Right.
So not only are these plants helping to restore the environment, they're also providing economic opportunities.
Exactly.
Tell me more about that.
Take the Chinese licorice plant, for example.
Okay.
It's a hardy species that can thrive in arid conditions, and its roots are highly valued for their medicinal properties.
Interesting.
They're used in traditional Chinese medicine and even exported to other countries.
Wow.
This creates a sustainable source of income for local communities who are now cultivating these plants instead of struggling to eke out a living in the harsh desert environment.
So they're essentially turning these desert plants into cash crops.
In a way, yes.
That's a brilliant way to integrate economic development with ecological restoration. It's like they're creating a virtuous cycle where everyone benefits.
Exactly.
And they're also encouraging the development of other desert-adapted crops.
Right.
Like dates, figs, and pomegranates.
Yes, those are all good examples.
These fruits can not only thrive in arid conditions, but also provide a source of food and income for local communities.
Exactly.
It sounds like they're creating a whole new agricultural landscape in the desert.
It is quite a transformation.
But I imagine there are challenges as well, right?
Of course, it takes time for these new crops to become established.
Right.
And for markets to develop. It requires investment infrastructure and collaboration between farmers, scientists, and businesses.
So it's not a quick fix.
It's not.
It's a long-term strategy that requires patience and persistence.
Absolutely. And they're constantly learning and adapting along the way.
Okay.
One of the key lessons learned is that community involvement is crucial.
Oh, that's interesting.
They're realizing that the success of the Great Green Wall depends not just on science and technology, but on the active participation and support of the people who live in these desert regions.
That makes sense. It's about empowering people to become stewards of their own environment.
Exactly.
What are some specific ways they're fostering that community involvement?
Well, they're implementing programs to train local communities in sustainable land management practices.
Okay.
They're providing them with the knowledge and skills to plant and care for trees, manage water resources, and even cultivate those valuable desert crops we talked about.
So they're not just handing out seeds and saying good luck.
Right.
They're actually investing in education and capacity building.
Exactly. And they're going even further by creating economic incentives for communities to participate in conservation efforts.
Oh, wow. Like what?
Things like payments for ecosystem services,
Okay.
where communities are rewarded for protecting forests, conserving water, and promoting biodiversity.
Wow. That's a really innovative approach.
It is.
It recognizes that conservation efforts need to be economically viable for people to fully embrace them. It sounds like they're really trying to create a win-win situation for both people and the planet.
That's the goal.
But I imagine there are also cultural and social challenges involved in working with communities that may have been marginalized or neglected for generations. How are they addressing those aspects?
You've hit on a really important point. It's not just about the technical aspects of planting trees and managing resources.
Right.
It's about building trust, understanding cultural nuances, and respecting traditional knowledge.
Okay.
And that requires a willingness to listen, learn, and adapt their approach to fit the specific needs and values of each community.
It sounds like they're approaching this project with a lot of sensitivity and humility.
I think so.
It's not just about imposing their vision, it's about working collaboratively with local communities to find solutions that work for everyone.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But let's be honest, no project of this scale is without its critics.
Of course not.
Are there concerns or criticisms about the Great Green Wall that you've come across in your research?
There are definitely valid concerns that need to be addressed.
Like what?
Some critics argue that the project is too focused on scale and speed and not enough on ecological balance. They worry about the potential long-term impact of introducing non-native species and altering the natural desert landscape.
Okay, so there's a risk of unintended consequences, even with the best intentions.
There's always that risk.
How are they responding to these criticisms?
Well, they're taking those concerns seriously and are working to address them through ongoing research and monitoring.
Okay.
They're carefully studying the ecological impacts of the green wall, tracking the growth of different plant species, and assessing the effects on soil health, water resources, and biodiversity.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
It's not.
They're recognizing the need for flexibility and adaptation based on what they're learning along the way.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process of experimentation, evaluation, and adjustment. And they're not afraid to make changes if they see that something isn't working as intended.
That willingness to adapt and learn from their mistakes is crucial for any long-term project.
It is.
It sounds like they're truly committed to making this work, not just for the sake of building a wall of trees, but for the sake of creating a sustainable future for these desert regions and the people who live there.
Absolutely. And that long-term vision is what sets this project apart.
Yeah.
It's not just about quick fixes. It's about creating a lasting legacy that will benefit generations to come.
So we've covered the intricate details of how they're making the Great Green Wall a reality, from high-tech drones to ancient water harvesting techniques, from community engagement to the careful selection of native plant species.
It's a multifaceted project.
It's clear that this is a multifaceted project with far-reaching implications. But as with any journey, the path ahead is never entirely clear.
That's true.
What does the future hold for China's desert greening initiatives? What challenges and opportunities lie ahead?
Well, that's a question that leads us into the next chapter of our deep dive.
So we've been on this journey exploring the Great Green Wall of China, from its ambitious scale to the intricate details of how they're making it happen.
Yeah.
It's clear this project is pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It really is.
But as you said, no journey is without its twists and turns.
Right.
So what does the road ahead look like for this monumental endeavor?
You're right. The future of any project of this magnitude is always a blend of possibilities and uncertainties.
Right.
But what's exciting to me about China's approach is their commitment to continuous learning and adaptation. They're not just resting on their laurels. They're actively seeking ways to improve and evolve.
That makes sense. They've been at this for decades.
Right.
So they must have gathered a wealth of knowledge and experience along the way.
Exactly. And they're not keeping those lessons to themselves.
Okay.
They're actively sharing their expertise with other countries facing similar challenges, offering technical assistance, and even investing in joint research projects.
Wow.
It's like they're building a global network of knowledge and collaboration to combat desertification on a united front.
So they're stepping up as global leaders in this field.
I think that's fair to say.
That's pretty impressive considering the scale of the challenges they're facing at home.
It definitely speaks to their long-term vision.
Right.
They recognize that desertification is a global issue that requires a global response. And they're willing to put their resources and expertise behind finding solutions that can benefit everyone.
But even with all that collaboration and shared knowledge, there are bound to be obstacles along the way, right? Especially with something as unpredictable as climate change.
You're spot on. Climate change is the wild card in all of this.
Right.
Rising temperatures, shifting rainfall patterns, and more extreme weather events could all throw a wrench in their plans.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's encouraging is that they're not burying their heads in the sand. They're actively incorporating climate change projections into their planning and design.
So they're trying to anticipate those challenges and build resilience into the system from the ground up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're experimenting with different plant species that can withstand extreme heat and drought, exploring innovative irrigation techniques that conserve water, and even developing early warning systems to prepare for potential disasters like flash floods or sandstorms.
It sounds like they're taking a multi-pronged approach, tackling the issue from every angle.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it.
It must be quite a balancing act trying to stay ahead of those ever-changing climate variables.
It certainly is, and it requires a constant feedback loop between scientists, policymakers, and local communities.
Right.
They need to be constantly monitoring the situation, analyzing data, and making adjustments as needed.
It's like steering a ship through uncharted waters.
Yeah.
You need to be constantly alert and ready to change course if the winds shift. And speaking of challenges, I imagine there's also the issue of balancing economic growth with environmental protection. As China's population continues to grow, so does the demand for land and resources.
Right.
How are they navigating that tension?
It's a delicate dance, for sure. But they seem determined to prove that economic development and environmental sustainability don't have to be mutually exclusive. They're promoting ecotourism, developing sustainable agricultural practices, and investing in renewable energy sources like solar and wind power.
Interesting.
It's all part of a broader strategy to create a green economy that benefits both people and the planet.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where economic prosperity goes hand in hand with environmental stewardship.
Yeah, that's the goal.
It's an ambitious goal, but it seems like you're making some real progress.
I think they are, and they're not shy about sharing their successes and failures with the world.
Oh, that's good.
They're hosting international conferences, publishing research papers, and even offering training programs to share their knowledge and inspire others to join the fight against desertification.
Wow.
It's clear they see this as a collective effort, not just a national one.
That spirit of collaboration is really inspiring. It's a reminder that we're all in this together.
Right.
And that by sharing knowledge and resources, we can achieve far more than we could alone.
Yeah, sure.
But even with all this progress, there are still some unanswered questions, right?
Of course.
Some uncertainties about the long-term impact of the Great Green Wall.
Yeah, we've talked about the potential downsides of introducing non-native species and altering the natural desert ecosystem.
Right.
Those concerns haven't gone away. The long-term ecological consequences are still being studied, and there's always the risk of unintended consequences.
So it's not a perfect solution. There are still risks and unknowns that need to be carefully considered.
Right.
But even with those caveats, the Great Green Wall of China stands as a powerful symbol of human ingenuity and determination.
I agree.
It shows that we can tackle seemingly insurmountable environmental challenges and make a real difference.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of long-term vision, strategic planning, and unwavering commitment. And it's a reminder that even in the face of a daunting challenge like desertification, there's always hope.
Yeah.
With the right combination of knowledge, innovation, and collaboration, we can restore our planet one tree, one community, one desert at a time.
Well said.
Yeah.
And on that note of hope and inspiration, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Great Green Wall of China.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating discussion.
It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope you've come away with a deeper understanding of this complex and multifaceted project.
Me too.
But the exploration doesn't have to end here.
Right.
There's always more to learn, more questions to ask, and more ways to get involved.
Exactly.
So keep diving deep. Keep those questions coming. And remember, even small actions can have a ripple effect when it comes to protecting our planet. Until next time, keep exploring.